The gap between questions and answers is infinite. The gap between questions and answers is infinite. This video explores the paradox of the gap and how it shapes our understanding of reality. Understanding something and living it are not the same thing. The mind can hold a clear insight about ego, impermanence, or attachment, and still act from the old pattern the moment stress arrives. In psychology, this gap is called the implementation gap, where knowledge and behavior fail to converge. What keeps them apart is identity threat. The sense of self is not just a story we believe. It is a system the nervous system defends. When insight threatens that system, the body registers danger before the mind finishes the thought. Sufi teachers describe this as the nafs resisting the truth it already knows. The student recites the teaching. The student does not embody it. The practical question is not what to understand better. It is what to do differently in the moment when the old pattern activates. The clearest view of the inner life appears in conflict with other people. When someone triggers a strong reaction, the feeling points inward, not just outward. Jungian psychology calls this projection. What we cannot accept in ourselves, we locate in others. The spiritual community version of this is spiritually inflated judgment, criticizing someone for ego while performing a subtler ego maneuver. Medieval Christian mystics like Myste warned against this. He described the person who speaks of God constantly as someone avoiding the silence where God might actually speak. Practically, this means that a charged reaction to another person is data about an unresolved interior pattern. The work is not to dissolve the reaction. The work is to follow it back to its source, without building a story about the other person that makes the inquiry unnecessary. Contemplative practice has never been equally available. In most traditions, the people who wrote down the teachings were not the people doing the hardest labor. Zen monasteries in Tang Dynasty China were supported by surrounding farming communities who rarely entered the gate. The same structural gap exists now. The attention economy sells mindfulness as a personal productivity tool, while the conditions that make sustained practice almost impossible for many people remain untouched. This is not an argument against practice. It is an argument against spirituality that treats external conditions as irrelevant, and a practical honesty is required. Naming material barriers as material barriers prevents the teaching from becoming a private consolation that accidentally endorses the conditions it should question. Paradox at the center of awakening discourse is that effort to become egoless often strengthens the ego, conducting the effort. The meditator tracking progress is still tracking. The person measuring how attached they are is still attached to measurement. Zen calls this chasing the ox while riding it. The Taoist tradition approaches this differently. Wu-wei is often translated as non-action, but more precisely means action that does not insert a self-conscious agenda into the natural movement of events. So the paradox is not resolved by understanding it. It dissolves briefly in moments of full attention, then reconstitutes. What changes over time is not the absence of self-consciousness, but a lighter relationship to its reappearance. The path is not escape from the paradox. The path is less resistance to being inside it too. Every tradition that takes consciousness seriously arrives at the same edge. Explanation stops, and direct investigation begins. The Tibetan practice of pointing out instruction does not describe Rigpa. It attempts to occasion a direct recognition. The teacher does not give the student a concept. The teacher removes obstacles to what is already present. Modern neuroscience circles the same territory from the outside. The default mode network quiets in states described as selfless. But quieting the network is not the same as what contemplatives describe as recognition of the nature of mind. The honest position is that the gap between third-person measurement and first-person investigation has not been closed. That gap is not a problem to be solved before practicing. It is the life question that makes continued practice worth sustaining. What are you when the story about what you are goes briefly quiet? Do you ever wonder why the body's surrender comes before the mind's acceptance, and what lies beyond that gap where questions and answers cease to matter?